Welcome, everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is CyberWarriorStudios. And as always, we are here for Security Happy Hour. Now, unfortunately, my co-host and partner in crime is a little under the weather today, so he will not be able to join us, but that's okay. I still love y'all, and I know you're really here for me anyway. So understand it's going to be a great show. So stay tuned, and I promise we'll be right back with an amazing guest. And we're back. And with me, I have the one and only Mike D. Now,
Mike D.
My buddy Mike over here, this way, because of my camera. All right. I met a few years ago at Logarithm, and it was funny how we met because I wasn't working for Logarithm. You're a sales guy for Logarithm. And so we were at the same conference, and I laughed because when we were talking, the first thing that we talked about was our backgrounds and the fact that you used to be an offensive guy. You used to be a hacker and malware like reverse engineer and analyst and all this stuff. So before we talk machine learning, let's give people an understanding of the fact that even though they may go look you up and figure out what you do now, it'll give precedence to the fact that you actually know your shit and what you're talking about.
I've been around for a long time, man. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I'll give you some background. I came up as a teenager in the '90s, so you can tell I'm in my 40s now. But really curious about compute and what to do with it. So I got my first computer, and we're not talking about the stuff that you learned in school, right? Using BASIC and COBOL and Pascal and stuff, even in high school. But I got my first computer that I bought myself, which 486, old compact. It was an all-in-one where you had the monitor, you had your 5.5 inch, your 3.5 inch, you had your 96 baud modem, everything built in one area. I got online with CompuServe. Those of you who might be watching who remember CompuServe, your first gateway before AOL acquired it.
I had Prodigy and Netscape Navigator, homie. Come on
now. There you go. Well, so CompuServe gave you a window to the world before the World Wide Web was well developed, right? So it was like on the cusp of Netscape, but they charge you by the minute to get online to look for anything. They also built the first social network platform. So it was a Java-based chat program, and this is where I got into offense. It was a Java-based chat program that ran in Netscape. Internet Explorer wasn't a thing yet, and the problem with it, though, is you can enumerate all the users in the chat room. Quick JavaScript hack, 2 functions. You can plug in somebody else's name and read all their DMs. So it was really weird because in the '90s, people didn't know what to do with the internet. They were exploring. People were doing weird stuff in their DMs in these chat rooms, and it was something else. So I met up with this guy. His name was Digital. That was his handle back in the day. He's based out of Colorado. And we put the JavaScript together. We used it. It was fun. It didn't do any damage to anybody. It wasn't a hacking thing, but it was interesting. We moved on. I moved on to building my own Slackware server, Linux server, which was an interesting project. I had never worked with anything but DOS 3.1 at the time, and we stood up DOS 3.1. Yeah, install your own TCP/IP stack if you dare. I stood up a Slackware server and then got a Renegade BBS installed up because I wanted to get into the BBS world. The internet was still kind of new. There wasn't much on it. It was fun, man. Renegade was cool. I got a couple extra lines. I worked at a company that did a lot of telco services, and I specifically worked in support over there so I could figure out default passwords, which was really awesome. I was able to reroute a couple extra lines to my phone line at home, and it was great. Meant I could have 3 or 4 or 5 people online with me and playing Legend of the Red Dragon. My first exposure, first time I got hacked on my Slackware install, the default settings in Renegade, there wasn't any security developed in these platforms back in the day, allowed for people to bypass authenticating or doing a callback to their phone number by putting an international number in. And there was also another area. If you left your file directory open, you're able to overwrite different passwords, and people can grab root and get into your shell at the time. So it was a interesting learning experience. We got owned a couple times. I was still young. We're going to fast forward a year or two. I started running with a crew in the '90s, and this is when Loft was active, and Cult of the Dead Cow, and all these boys were active, and they're starting to build a lot of their tools and their scripts. But this crew I ran with, and I'm not going to mention them by name. Um, we we were on the front edge of Microsoft Front Page when it launched. Now, Front Page was Microsoft's first editing software and website development software, and it was interesting in the fact that on a default install, some of the directories were world writable.
I remember Front Page.
That's right.
I actually hated Front Page and learned to hate it because when I was developing websites, I realized all the garbage code it would put in the back end because I did all my websites in Notepad. I didn't use an editor well, none of like the fancy text editors or anything like that were out at that point, or code editors.
No
So
Notepad plus, no nothing.
Yeah. So I did all mine in Notepad, and I started using Front Page. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is easy. I can do this. And when I got to, I want to say it was high school, my teacher looked at me and he said, quit using that shit. And I looked at him and I said, why? He said, now go look at the code after you did all that bullshit. And I was like, okay. And I looked at the code and I was like, no, you ruined everything.
It's by hand was great, right? Because you can tweak and tune and can make your changes. It was before GitHub was the thing, and you're doing, pulls and pushes to repos. Yep. Onto the Front Page thing, they actually and you can look this up if you want, anybody. But when they installed default directories, and it was a VTI bin directory and a VTI private directory. Now the administrator PWD, which was the password, was world writable. So if you wanted to do a wget and then a push back to the server and override it, you could, and we did. And Angel Fire and GeoCities and all these big corporations at the time, these big website hosts, were rolling out Front Page without changing those default directories. So we had a lot of fun. It wasn't we didn't cause any damage or anything. We tested around. We put up a couple web pages on the Front Page to let them know that they had issues and stuff. And we're talking early '90s when it was still not a criminal enterprise. People were just playing around.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't a criminal enterprise, and even back then, the majority of what you saw back then, because it was still in its infancy, was a lot of hacktivism. And honestly, unless you were hacking a government, it was kids having fun. Like that was the only way you could get in trouble was if you were hacking like a 3-letter agency or some other country's government. That would get you in trouble.
Or Bell South, like some of the more famous guys from that era. We didn't go to that level though. But yeah, it was interesting, man. I stopped doing cyber for a couple of years in '98. I was in college. I met my wife. Like I immigrated here to this country, to America. And I met my wife. She's American. She said, she was tired of doing school up where I lived, and she's like, let's go back down here. I was 20 at the time, so I got into cars for a long time, tuning up Mustangs and Eclipses and stuff. I found my way back into cyber in mid 2005, and basically into code and development. I stood up a couple LAMP servers with my buddy. He was working for a federal contractor at the time, out in Oklahoma. I'm not going to drop any names. And we decided to decompile a really popular gaming system and rebuild it, and then set up private servers, which is pretty cool. We did that for a couple of years. We had a great user base. We built it all in MySQL, Apache. We did some scripting back to PayPal's API for donations and stuff, and it was fun, man. It was good. We both decided to get careers in cyber though, so we decided, cool, man, we got to stop playing around. Let's go do our own thing. He went on to another defense agency. I went over to Kaspersky, which is really interesting.
That was your first. I remember us talking. That was one of your first jobs.
First vendor job, yeah, vendor jobs, yeah.
Were you sales for them, or were you actual cybersecurity for them?
No, I had to get a mortgage, right? And I couldn't justify income with everything, so I had to
I
get
know
bank
that pain.
statements,
I
all that
just got my
stuff.
mortgage last year. I know that
There
pain.
you go. So I took a job in tech support at Kaspersky. Didn't know what they did. I knew they had an endpoint product. They competed with McAfee, Symantec, and stuff, but wasn't. I didn't know what they did. So I took a job to support. Within a couple months, took over running escalations, built out uh, their professional services team. Went after a lot of big accounts in the Americas. In the interim, while I was doing that, though, I got access to the great team over at Kaspersky. It's the global research and analysis team. A lot of great guys. A lot of Soviet bloc era guys. From Ukraine, from Russia, from Belarus, from Romania, who all worked there. And these guys were, they were hardcore in analysis. They taught me how to use Black Ice and IDA Pro.
And I
So
remember Black Ice. That was
a long time ago,
a
freeware, right?
while ago.
Mm.
Man, now you're making me feel. I don't normally feel old, Mike. You got me feeling old now talking
Dude,
about this.
I'm starting to show my age. I got no more. It's all gray now. It's patchy. Anyways, uh, so yeah, they taught me how to do malware disassembly, and the great thing in about 2010 when Stuxnet hit, got me samples. I was working at Kaspersky. We pulled it apart. We were able to attribute it. The great team was the vanguard for that, but they gave us all samples internally to play with and set up sinkholes. And so we took apart Stuxnet, realized the really efficient code design and the new Windows vulnerabilities, 0 days that we'd never seen before. So we knew it had to be a nation state. Then we took apart Miniduke and Flame and Conficker when it hit, which was an auto run. But
Yep.
Conficker was built as a mechanism to install other 0 days. People thought it was in of itself the payload, but it was built to actually set different payload. So I did
So
malware
that was
analysis.
that. So if that wasn't the payload, so Conficker. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Conficker a worm or a virus?
It was
Conficker
a
was a
worm.
worm.
It was an auto run worm. It used registry keys. It hijacked processes. It was pretty persistent. It was
Yeah.
a pain in the ass to remove. A lot of the big players that had problems with it. They started building out detection rules for it, but most of the time to pick it up, Conficker, because it changed so often, and it was uh, it was mutating quite often, and they had this was before fast flux DNS and all that other
Yeah.
stuff. But the code had mutated so often that you had to use heuristics engines, so sandboxes and stuff, to actually detect it, because signature-based detection was failing all the time against it. So
Do you,
it was
not to cut you off, but would you
yeah.
think that particular worm, and I'm sure we've had many others that are very much mutatable, that they mutate all the time and change their signatures. Would you say that that is one of the kickstarters to the EDR type of platform that gets into, we're not going to use just signatures anymore. Now we're going to use AI or machine learning or behavioral analytics or any of these multitude of things?
So most of the EDR platforms are, we'll call them EPPs back then, right? So in 2010, most of them were called endpoint protection platforms. The Semantics, the
Mm-hmm.
McAfees, the Kasperskys, Trend Micros, Sophos. So they had a number of components in the EPPs. They had their antivirus engine, which was interesting, which was all signature based, right? You get
Right.
database updates or pushes down, however you want to schedule it, as many times per day with some type of centralized console. The second component most of them had was some type of sandboxing. And I'll tell you about sandbox evasion techniques in a second. Third component, some type of application control, whether it was whitelist or blacklist, all. And then they had some type of device control because it was an agent that sat on the device. You could block USB ports, you could block other things by serial number, whatever else. So four
Right.
major components to them. The where the ML and AI guys started coming into play, and this is a that you have to fast forward about 4 years there, is when signature-based and heuristic-based detection was being challenged by evasion techniques, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those evasion techniques, most modern worms, most modern malware at that time was looking for hard disk size less than 20 megs, which means it's captured in the sandbox, right?
Right.
So it terminated itself, deleted itself. It would look for, which is really, really cool. It would call API functions in Windows to look to see if the mouse had moved at all, to see if a human was intervening on it, or whether it was automated running and processing. So there were a number of evasion techniques that were being built, and the heuristics engines weren't able to keep up with it. So I'm going to fast forward about 2 years. Carbon Black hits the market. Carbon Black was mostly, well, they weren't Carbon Black at the time. They were like Bit9 or whatever. They were an application monitoring whitelist, blacklist platform. Carbon Black, I think, merged with like Cofense or something else.
Yeah, I forget who, because they've been purchased, I think, twice now.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
well,
they were
Carbon Black got bought by VMware and then moved up, but they were Bit9 initially, which was just application control, and then obviously some other stuff.
Yeah, because Carbon Black was the first one to come out that did anything like that.
They had Carbon Black Defend, Carbon Black Respond. They had a little bit of threat hunting built into them. They got picked up by VMware a few years later. But when Carbon Black came out, then you had George Kurtz and the CrowdStrike teams about 2 years after Carbon Black, who started building out their platform. And I'm going to have to give a shout out to the IDF and the Israeli Defense Forces, kind of like our Air Force over here. They train up a lot of great cyber professionals who then go out into the private market and start building things.
I've seen them, man. Them guys are
they're pretty awesome, man.
So you had they give anybody here a run for their money, easy.
Well, you had a whole bunch of them just start under this development program, start building their own companies, and in building their companies, they started looking at big data. You had Facebook and Google who launched the era of big data and aggregation, right? So you had some expertise in Hadoop and Hadoop clusters and HDFS and everything else that was out there, and then Spark, which came out as a development out of Google, out of the Alphabet. And Spark was the initial algorithms from ML. So a lot of companies started taking advantage of it. CrowdStrike started doing it, and it obviously CrowdStrike blew up for a number of different reasons to the massive company it is today. You have these other players now in the market like SentinelOne who've taken great advantage of it, who have a great product and platform too. And it's been a natural evolution of the endpoint protection platform. So it's been interesting. So I've been an engineer for a long time. My background is engineering. I might run a sales organization now just because.
Now you do, but I know you still keep up with it. I know you still have fun on occasion. We talked. I know you have fun. You're like, you know what? Let me just hack the box for a little bit. Let me just go see what I can still do.
I still have ESX servers over here. I got a couple decommissioned SunSpark 1400s, which are old as hell, down in the basement.
I have a buddy here that says he still has the DOS 3.1 box with discs and manuals.
Man, I wouldn't even know where to start with those anymore. I don't even know if you can load them on a modern. You might be able to load it like on a VM or something, even a modern laptop or something. Yeah, I don't know if this driver's still available.
The big thing about it is, I don't have any sponsors for this show, just in case y'all are aware. No one actually sponsors me. But shout out to CrowdStrike. As a pen tester, they have been by far one of the hardest EDR platforms to get around. And yes, there are ways if you want to sit there and are actually targeting an organization as a red teamer or an actual malicious person. Yes, I'm sure there's a way to bypass it. But as a pen tester, when you're running tools, fuck that. They're like, you know what? Nope, we're gonna see you later. You're gone. Have fun.
Yeah, they're pretty tight, and obviously the way to get around any EDR platform is to look for weak entry points, right? I think we saw with LAUSD this week they had a ransomware attack just spread across their network pretty quickly over the Labor Day weekend. So you had two things, right? Number one, foreign attackers, whether it's a nation state or a criminal group, will always look for times when Americans are busy. July 4th, Labor Day weekend, Christmas time, New Year's Eve. They are great times for them to run their attacks because people are typically offline, not engaged, they're not paying attention. And that's typically when they run attacks. So Labor Day, and it's the start of the school year, right? So they're getting systems up and ready. They're getting Chromebooks or whatever ready for the students. They're getting the lessons plans put together. They're getting all the stuff for the kids come back to school. So LAUSD experienced a ransomware attack this weekend, and they have something like I don't know, 600,000 devices or more spread across 1,000 campuses. Now, as a EDR vendor, I would love to be able to protect every single asset they have out there. The reality is, I've done deployments of 42,000, 100,000 devices when I worked in professional services of EDR platforms and stuff. And it is impossible to get 100% coverage. Devices are turned off, especially if you have 1,000 locations. There is no way without a team of 100 people doing it that you can cover that many devices. So while EDR is great for, being in place when it's in place, if it's not there, it's really easy to slip past.
Yeah, my
And then
buddy
yeah,
here says Fridays are good too. People get sloppy close to the weekend. There are
that's right.
so many times that, and beyond EDR not being installed, what I have found, especially with EDR platforms like Cylance that require you to actually configure the profiles and configure what it's blocking, what it's not blocking. Is it a server? Is it a laptop? Is it this, that, and the third? A lot of these organizations that take these great products, and Cylance implemented properly is a great product, but they install it and they're just like, okay, we're good. No configuration, no nothing, just we're good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a level of effort, right?
Yeah.
I think you worked on the delivery side of the house before. You know that if you're not doing proper planning and you don't have buy-in from the different groups that you're going to be installing, whatever, a firewall, a switch, an endpoint platform, whatever, to, and you don't have buy-in from all those groups that it's necessary, and this is the timeline that we're going to do it, then projects will typically get hung up. But once they start getting hung up, it's a snowball effect, right? So you gotta number one, you always have to have a great project planner, a planner at the front end who can herd all the cats, get everybody online. And you got to put together a really great SOW, right? Your statement of work has to be really well defined to whatever the outcomes are. And then you got to get people who can deliver against it. It's really
Yeah.
important that they know how to deliver against it and they can deliver against it. Timelines are always going to slip in every big project, but
I think the weakest part that I have seen, especially from like an organizational standpoint, is the refusal to buy professional services from an organization that's installing it. If you got a company and you purchase a product from said company, and let's just say you're not going through an MSSP or something like that, you're actually going through the company itself, like a logarithm or a
like a
McAfee
vendor,
or
yeah,
whatever. You're actually going through them, and they say, "Hey, we have ProServe that can help you do all this, set it all up, get it all running, and this." And they're like, nah, just send us what we need, and we're good. I don't know what you need because you haven't sent me the paperwork to tell me what you need. Just,
yeah.
you know what? I want this, this, and this. Like that does more harm and completely eliminates the capabilities of these products.
Well,
And so, have you seen that? Does that happen more often than not in the realm that you work in? Because
I, w-
I want
I
to
would,
talk machine learning because that's the premise to this show. But
we will.
now that I think about it, I find that to be an extreme weakness in kind of the security side of things. Is that people are unwilling to spend the money to have things set up properly.
It can be hubris sometimes, right? You know, you have folks who maybe overestimate their capabilities, or maybe folks who overestimate the time that they have to be able to deploy something like this. When it doesn't matter if you're deploying a SIM or an EDR, you're deploying a new firewall, a CASB, any type of security appliance or whatever. It could be free stuff, right? Um, it could be anything out there, elk stack or
Right.
whatever you want. The reality is everything requires some type of tuning, right? Everything requires some type of expertise, either working in the environment, your own environment, or a customer environment. And if your hubris doesn't allow you to recognize that there are some weaknesses in what you can do and what you can achieve, then you're going to set the organization up for failure. Um, my most painful moments in the manufacturing industry are when we have customers and sales teams who get together who decide to proceed with the transaction, but they don't define what the outcome should be for that customer, right? Either the customer doesn't or the salesperson doesn't. And the whole goal of rolling out these security platforms is to figure out, and put it simply, every company has something to sell, right? So you could be Altoids and you're selling mints. You could be Thermoflask, you're selling flasks and stuff. All those companies need security, but that's not their business. That's not where they make their revenues. It's not where they manage their P&Ls. Security has to be something that enables them to not focus on the security side of the house, that they can automate, that they can make as simple as possible, so they can actually focus on revenue creation and value creation in their own market. And if you can't get a customer to verbalize how a platform will help him reduce his time looking at the security logs or looking at his EDR logs or looking at whatever, and focus on other things that help the business grow, then you've probably failed at being able to effectively position that customer for success.
Yeah, and we got Griffin InfoSec here. Leadership not willing to spend money. Checkbox security. As long as we buy the tool, we're good.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so we see that a lot. But I want to touch on what you just said recently is the automation side, which is the machine learning side, which is there's so many buzzwords: AI, machine learning, behavioral
Yeah.
analytics. Some of them are valid. Some of them I think people are just using buzzwords and are batshit crazy. That's just me. But when it comes to the machine learning side of things and the way that affects security, what do you see as the pros and cons to that of how that can really, how machine learning really truly affects the security professional in the job market and security as a whole?
So a couple different types of automation. We'll get into to like use case automation and what we call smart response automation, all that other stuff that you do through like SOAR platforms or security platforms, whatever. On the machine learning side, you have to understand kind of the evolution of the branches of machine learning. Machine learning isn't, and it's become such a architecture word. It's so hard for me to talk about ML or AI these days, just because it feels wrong because so many people have misused it.
Oh, it's a
Machine
buzzword.
learning,
That's why I hate it. That's why I hate
yeah,
when people are like, "Oh yeah, this has AI." So it
well, because machine learning in and of itself has probably like 80 different branches, what you can do with it. Three major branches. You have unsupervised learning. So this is the low barrier to entry for almost every product. So unsupervised learning is a couple different things. You have unstructured um, unstructured data that comes into the platform, and that unstructured data is run through algorithms like principal component analysis or dimensionality reduction. Both of those are used to take a look at unstructured data and then find commonalities on the data, and then reduce that data down to the most common thing, right? So let's say you get a Kafka stream, or you get a JSON log file or a Windows event file. You've always got a lot of junk in these files, right? You've either got arrays built into the files, you got commas, you've got line breaks or whatever. So trying to get commonality between it, because every vendor does their logging so much different, right? So what the PCA does, and obviously dimensionality reduction, is it takes a look at those files and finds commonalities. Here's an IP address. This looks like an IP address. So this is going to be IP addresses. It sees a username. That format looks common. That's a username. It sees hashes. Same thing. So it's a great way to get into the industry, because you don't require a lot of data scientists. You have the algorithm kind of learning and using PCA and dimensionality reduction to kind of understand what the data should look like. Another part of unsupervised learning, and this is why it's a low barrier to entry, and most vendors do it, is using k-means reduction and k-means peer clustering. So if you look at peer clustering, it looks like this is the closest thing that looks like this, and if there are any deviations to it, then I'm gonna bubble up an alert or something. So it might be, hey, I look a lot like the other six logarithm guys in the room, and then you have a Presidio guy walk over or somebody walk over, and that data stream would say, hey, this guy looks a little bit different. Those guys all look alike. And it would bubble that up as an alert. It wouldn't tell you that it's definitely a threat. It wouldn't tell you that there was absolutely a problem with it. But it looks at that peer clustering for the next closest peer. Another branch, which is a more expensive branch of machine learning, and this is so just about every vendor out there today is doing some type of unsupervised learning because it's really easy. It doesn't require a lot of people. It requires some developers to roll out their algorithms. The more expensive branch is supervised learning. Supervised learning is when you actually have to have data scientists who are using classification and regression against the data that comes in. So they have to condition the data, they have to tune the data, they have to label the data. The great thing about it is you get better output, right? Because all the data is actually massaged, managed, and ready for prime time. If you look at an announcement from AWS from about 3 weeks ago at Black Hat, them and about I think 6 other vendors are looking to put together like an open log framework that everybody does. Everybody uses the same logging type of framework.
That'd be
It's
great. I've worked with Sims. That would be fucking phenomenal
it would
because
be.
I hate trying to parse logs because for some reason the freaking mechanism is different. And it's like, oh, I didn't get that little bit because I don't have it in my regex. Like,
Yeah,
fuck you, homie.
I'm telling you, man, it's crazy. Well, and I'll roll back to supervised learning, but let me just talk about the AWS thing for a minute. There have been a number of other vendors who tried this in the past, right? ArcSight, who was the beast back in the day,
Yes.
they owned the
Yes.
federal market, they owned everybody because they were basically one of the first SIMs to the market back in the early 2000s. They tried to push down a CEF format, common event format, to all the vendors. Uh,
Microsoft used that for a little while.
they did. Well, everybody kind of flirted with it, but then they realized it was really limited. You had, 10, 12, 15 fields or whatever. And then as the EDR vendors and firewall vendors started realizing we have a lot more data than that, we're going to go on our own format. We're going to do syslog or whatever. IBM, just prior to IBM, QRadar was its own company. QRadar, when they got acquired by IBM tried to use their muscle at that time to do Leaf, which is log extended event format,
I haven't seen
and
that
tried
one.
to force all the vendors into that format. So some vendors acquiesced. Most vendors decided, nah, we're not going to do it. So it's been about 15 years since anybody with any muscle or size in the industry has tried to force a common format. And AWS is trying to do it through this partnership. I hope it works. The reason why I hope it works, whoever solves that problem, which is the different log formats, wins the ML game.
You
Because
think?
the most expensive thing you do in machine learning right now is supervised learning. Data scientists, they cost a lot of money on your payroll, right? To do all that conditioning, to do the data massaging, to format the data. This isn't just parsers or guys who are doing that. We're talking about creating the algorithms that look at the data and then looking at the data and actually doing the manual labeling and stuff. It's a really expensive proposition for a lot of folks. The big organizations do it well. Google, Amazon, Facebook. I mean, they have teams of data scientists who can do labeling and feature extraction with supervised learning. That's why their targeted ads are phenomenal, right?
Oh my
You're
goodness.
we're doing CyberWarriorStudios right now. We'll probably talk about something. 10 minutes from now, I get off. Probably Google will bring something else up on us because
Oh yeah.
YouTube transcribed everything we said, passed it off to the machine learning. The supervised learning probably understands it, pulled out keyword, and then served me an ad, right?
Yeah, but their closed caption is going to suck and not actually pull up an actual closed caption that fucking works.
Mm.
So, and I
What's
don't do
really
my own. So if YouTube wants to fucking do it, they can do it, but they really need to figure out what the hell they're doing.
what's
Just
really weird
saying.
about closed captioning is, I'll watch some videos sometimes on YouTube, and I'll go to closed caption because maybe it's not all that clear, or I'm listening to something else, but I want to kind of read what's going on, and it'll show up as German, or it'll show
Yeah.
up as like a different language, and I'm like, but I can hear him speaking English. Why is this? Why is this
So
translated?
what happens as a creator, and I know this, is if they upload their own closed captioning, they can
Mm.
upload it in a different language, and
Oh wow!
so you get what they uploaded, not what YouTube created or what somebody else did.
I thought
You
I thought
literally
I was
get
going
the
crazy the first time it
SRT
happened.
file that they
Yeah,
uploaded.
that's crazy. Um,
So machine learning though, back
well,
to that topic because
I'll
it's
tell you about the
interesting.
third branch, the least
Yes.
expensive branch. And there's about 20 other branches underneath this branch, but it's reinforcement learning. So now the forward thinking vendors, the vendors who are really investing in machine learning and understand that unsupervised, lots of false positives, true negatives, whatever. Uh, Supervised, way too expensive on my P&L. I can't hire this many data scientists. They're doing something called reinforcement learning. Now, reinforcement learning is like what Google has been doing to all of us for the last 15 years with their captchas, right? Show me the 4 pictures of a bike, right? And you got 9 different blocks or whatever, and you click up the pictures. You're actually training Google's algorithm, their facial detection, their object detection algorithms. So when they do Google mapping around the world and stuff like that, they understand what those objects are. So reinforcement learning is basically the way a vendor can bring in a yes no function, right? So maybe they have already got a little bit of unsupervised learning, they have some supervised learning, but then in the front end of the product to bring in reinforcement learning. So hey, this looks like it might be interesting, please check it out. So you check it out, then they'll have a button that pops up that says, was this valuable or interesting to you, yes or no? You train the algorithm by your actions as a SOC analyst. So every time you classify something, this looks like an IP address. You think it's an IP address. Yes, you're training the algorithm yourself. So basically, you take the onus and the cost off of hiring so many data scientists, and you actually get the SOC people or the people interacting with the product to train their algorithms. That's
That is
reinforcement learning.
that's interesting, and I actually like that way of doing things from a security side. From a Google side, fuck you, Google, go to hell. You can bite me. But from a security standpoint, that's actually really valid because, hey, is this what I think it is? It would provide so much more context than, hey, I got to build a million regex parsers because I have products that have not yet come out with a log format that X vendor understands, or they understand it but don't know what all the data is, so they don't know what field to put it in, or if it's an event.
Yep.
So I I like the fact of, hey, is this valid to you? Who do you think, and how do I put this and not get you in trouble? Um, pick your target platform, and I'm not going to say SIM EDR. You take your pick.
Yeah.
If you could take your pick of any platform, any security device, any security service, who would you say is making the most headway in machine learning?
Uh, Outside of the big boys who track us and everything we do, I think I think the easiest way to answer that will be whoever solves the logging challenge is going to be the winner of ML, right? Because if you can solve a common format that's systemic across every device, like AWS is trying to do with their joint partners right now, I think there's a number of security manufacturers that are built into it. If they adopt it and the industry adopts it, whoever gets their supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and their reinforcement learning online with, I know these 30 fields are coming because this is what we have adopted as a standard.
Mhm.
Whoever can bring that into their product and train it properly will win the ML race, and then move on to deep learning or neural net learning and all the other weird things that come out of machine learning.
Right now, what do you think is better, behavioral analytics or machine learning? I'm kind of
So it
curious about that because
depends.
they're two
It
really,
depends.
I mean, they're in the same field of machine learning and behavioral analytics,
Yeah.
but behavioral analytics kind of, it requires user interaction to do everything, whereas we have, like you said, the multitude of branches for machine learning where some require it, some don't, some have a little bit. So
I want
behavioral analytics, I think, falls in that realm.
it.
Is
It
it valid?
does, but so I think the best way to describe behavioral analytics versus ML, and really good ML, not baseline ML that creates false positives and stuff, is behavioral analytics can tell you what you've seen already, right?
Mhm.
The people who have built the correlation rules, who have built any triggers, however people have structured or function in the product, heuristics engines, whatever. All of that is kind of codified, right? If this looks like this, then this, right? It's simple math to do multi-dimensional analytics or behavioral analytics. you can have 15 different things. These are all trigger points, and if they raise a risk score, this is where you want to do. And then you tie automation in to take this action, blah blah blah. So it's about the known, right? Something that's known, right? If we see a cross domain attack, we see lateral movement within the network, different accounts being enumerated, all the different things that you would typically put together as an attack pattern in MITRE or whatever, that can create one rule set or some type of behavior. The difference between that and ML isn't quite as descriptive because it's for unknown attacks. It's for unknown type of things, right? It's looking at a whole range of data, whether it's IPs, users, network, whatever you're feeding into it. And if you have great labeling and great feature extraction in it, and you've done great reinforcement learning, you can make your ML actually make those determinations for you pretty easily. So it all depends on the implementation and deployment of them. Behavior analytics today are, some of the good platforms have a lot of rule sets that are built. They're easy to customize. They're easy for users to deploy, SOCs, MSSPs, whatever. The best ML platforms out there today can help look for the unknown unknowns. So the attacks that we've never seen before, the exploits in kernel, the hijacking of processes combined with a file dropper combined with an encryption event or whatever else. So I would say the EDR guys are doing a really good job. The SentinelOnes, CrowdStrikes, and stuff at really tuning ML to understand operating environments like Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever, and what's normal in those operating environments. And if they're smart, and I don't know functionally what to do because I haven't worked for an EDR vendor for 9 years, they're taking a lot of that data up. And while they're not taking customer data up, they are taking up metadata, right? To better understand what looks like a threat, what doesn't look like a threat, which I think feeds CrowdStrike's threat feeds too. And it's all opt-in, obviously. They don't take it without asking it. But I think they're doing a great job of really understanding the endpoint environment out there. But again, like back to the beginning of the show, right? Not every endpoint is covered. There's always gaps. So you have to have some type of tool in the center, like a SIM platform, a SOC platform that can take in the firewall stuff, take in the network flows, take in your NDR products, we have an NDR product, your Vectras, your extra hops, whatever else, and pour it all into the platform. So you can do that multi-dimensional behavior analytic, and you can apply your ML to it at the same time.
And I think that's the big thing is when you're looking at machine learning and you're looking at what it can do, it's only as good as how you deploy it. And to your point, if you're missing an endpoint or something like that, and when you're looking at right now and probably going forward till we all die out eventually, it's going to be, you're going to see more and more organizations that adopt the remote workforce of I can work anywhere. And so between BYOB and corporate devices, people shut that shit down all the time, because if you're not a computer person and your organization does not say, hey, this has to be on between this time and this time, half the time they shut it down. They're like, I'm done with work. See you later. Yeah. I'm out. And so it doesn't get the patches, the updates, the installs, whatever it needs. Yeah. And so, I think EDR, and I never thought of it from that context. I always got mad when organizations were like, oh, we don't have EDR to fully deployed. Now, if you don't have it fully deployed on your servers, that's your own damn fault. But if you don't have it fully deployed on your endpoints, it's a whole different can of worms, because we've had that problem for ages when it comes to just trying to get patches installed on Windows operating systems on the desktops. Yep. I mean, how many corporate desktops did people shut down just because they were like, I'm out, see you later, and they'd shut it down and leave?
I think what a lot of companies forget about too, and there's an investment they have to make. I think more companies are doing it now. They have to make an investment in their people, and I'm not talking just their frontline people, their sales people, their sales associates, their finance people, but their backline people too, man. The executives, their executive assistants, their corporate controllers and stuff. Because really, the simplest, the biggest attack vector has and always will be through email. It always has been. Yep. It's spear phishing, targeted phishing, not water holing, but spear phishing. And people will click on links, they'll click on PDF documents and stuff. So the reason I say that is there has to be an investment in this industry at looking at things like Know Before and the training platforms, right? They're phenomenal at API integration nowadays. We're actually a Know Before customer. You know,
Look,
I love them.
I
I love
like what
them.
look Know Before I think is based out of Pittsburgh. I ain't even gonna lie.
Oh, are they?
Um,
No shit.
I believe they are. I could be wrong. I know they're. I've talked to them previously. I like the premise. I like what they're trying to do. My problem now and will forever
Automation,
be
automation.
not the automation. It's the CBT learning.
Yeah,
I truly and full heartedly believe no one that is actually working on a daily basis gives a goddamn about computer based training. They look at it, they click through it, and they're like, you know what? Fuck you, I'm done. See you later.
human nature. Human nature, though. So we have to adapt what we do to make people more secure through human nature. The reason I called out Know Before is API access. Um, Here we go. So maybe you do have a spear phishing email that comes across, right? And then let's say Chuck clicks on it. He gets compromised. The EDR picks it up right away. Let's say he has an EDR. It's cool. Sentinel-1 detects that. Boom. Um, that detection should be then fed into a SIM platform, a SOC platform like Logarithm. Uh, and if that detection hits, then it should have his username. It should have his domain address, his domain name. It should, because it's coming from the EDR, right? The file hash, the exploit type, whatever else. That data should be then parsed out and then passed to some type of smart response. That smart response should automatically query something like Know Before and then assign a new lesson to them about learn about spear phishing. Uh, on top of that, you should have another smart response or automated response that sends them an email, maybe from the ops CISO or whatever, that says, hey, you clicked on something in your email a couple minutes ago. It almost damaged your laptop. You have assigned training. Make sure you take your training. You have 24 hours to complete it, or we'll have to take action. Um, you have to build that automated routine. You got to scare them, put some fear in them. Man, I just got exploited because I clicked on that, and they're watching me. They saw it happen. They assigned the training already, and I got an email from my CISO saying I could be, because of my actions, they could take repercussions against me up to and including termination. So if you automate that process and you hook these platforms in together properly with a plan, man, you can change human behavior real quick.
So let me ask you a question about that because again, we're talking about the automation side of things, and automation is huge. Look, for anybody watching, I want you to understand something. For all those that don't think automation is going to take over like some of your menial jobs, me and Mike were talking beforehand, and we full heartedly agree. As much as I don't think automation, and go watch uh,
The Great Divide.
Technically Divided from Hacker
Yeah.
Valley Media. They just had a conversation about this, like I think it was 2 weeks ago. Um, Automation has its place. It is taking over a lot of menial jobs, whether that be the kiosk at McDonald's or even when you look at your SOAR platforms and things like that. Automation has its place. I full heartedly believe that you're never going to erase completely out of security the human element to validate and verify, is this a threat? Is this not a threat? Do we need to take action right now or can we wait? So, by all means, I'm all for automation, but there's a limit to what I will agree to.
Yeah, no, I mean, so you're going to need it for the short term. And when I say the short term, 10, 15 years, as ML gets better, as deep learning gets better, as industries get better at rolling out use cases, and we get better at understanding what use cases won't cause disruption to industry if we do automate something, right? I think automation will be well, right now limited automation with some manual intervention is pretty cool. If we talk about automation at scale, like across the entire world, the reality is most manufacturing is heavily automated, right? McDonald's during COVID went kiosks, two people in the back to put the sandwiches in the wrappers. Menial tasks and menial jobs. Starbucks is fighting a war of contention against folks trying to unionize in different areas of the country with them and drive up minimum wage $22, $30 or whatever. where it no longer becomes a profit maker for Starbucks to hire people. Maybe they invest in robotics and automation to make those lattes, like you saw at that spot down in Caesar's Palace down in Vegas. They got the automated robot who makes everybody's coffees for them. So automation is coming. So menial jobs are going to go away. So my recommendation to a lot of people these days, especially folks who are coming up in college and stuff, is if you're looking for careers, there are two certainties. Number one, STEM and sciences, right? STEM is super important. We need a lot more people in STEM to fill a lot of the gaps out here we just don't have enough people to fill all the jobs we need. So STEM is super important, and science, technology, engineering. We need great folks to join the industry. The second part of it is, if you're not STEM inclined, you don't like, and it's not a lot of math. Okay, it's not super math. I got a degree with barely knowing algebra. I can do algebra, but I hate it. I can do calculus, but I hate it. I've never built an array without at least breaking something for 15 times before tuning it because I didn't understand the math behind it. You don't have to be a math wizard to do it. But if STEM is not your thing, man, I fully support. There's always going to be a need, even though we're starting to automate building houses, right? You're seeing these boxable. Boxable is its own little thing now, where it's a 700-foot house, fully contained, built in a factory, shipped somewhere, kind of like old mobile homes and all that stuff. But there's a lot of companies that are springing up because they want to be energy efficient. They're trying to align with how finance is looking at environmental, social governance, ESG scores and stuff, right? So the future will be pods. They can be pods that are connected to each other and pre-built and stuff. But the reality is, until that comes, you still have 40 million homes or whatever in the U.S. that are built the old way, right? You put up
I'm living
sticks,
in
you
one.
throw sheetrock on it. So the other job area that is not going to go away for at least 50 years: plumbers, electricians, painters, woodworkers. There's always going to be
Honestly,
that
I don't
that
see.
skill set in the
There's a
trades.
few that I don't ever see going away.
Yeah,
There really is. Again, there's still going to be that human element. Even your plumbers, you can't.
no,
What are
you
you going
can't.
to do? Send a robot to my house that's going to like sink down into the pipes and figure it all out? Like,
Healthcare is going to automate. You know that, right?
well, they've
Um,
already started that with when you look at your surgical and stuff. There are certain aspects of healthcare that will,
well, they
but I
make the
don't think all
decisions.
of it.
It will. Give it 20 years. 20 years, most of the healthcare can be automated. They already automate intravenous pumping and stuff when people are in the hospitals, what times to pump it. If blood sugar or heart rate drops down here, pump this into them, right? They also have the ability to scan through MRIs and look for, because the human eye is fallible, right? So you're looking at MRI. Any of us have ever
Yeah.
looked at X-ray, MRI. We might miss that tiny little white spot over there. But you have ML that can actually look through it and then identify that and make a recommendation to the doctor. Doctors are going to be more like order takers eventually, where they're going to say,
Or they'll
okay, cool,
become the
it's
nurses
recommending
that they've
this.
abused for so many years.
That's right. Well, nurses will go away eventually. Robotics will replace that too. Uh, the the future is technology and automation, because the problem right now is you don't have it at scale, so it's not produced at scale. So it's very expensive right now, right? Well,
Right.
when you start getting companies like BlackRock, the big boys, the big investment firms, Vanguard and BlackRock, who start investing in those companies and helping them build out at scale, the price comes down, adoption goes up.
So before I touch on that, I do have one here because we were talking about how you were talking about emails and scare tactics. Got to be careful with scare tactics. It creates a culture of fear. Next thing you know, good employees leave out of fear. Most
You're
companies
right.
do fish tests and training all wrong. And that
That's right.
is when you use those fear tactics. And that is why I have always despised companies that sell their products using FUD.
Yeah,
If you sell your product using FUD, I will not buy it. I will not
that's right.
recommend it to anybody. I will tell everybody to avoid you because your salespeople suck and you have shit marketing. You could have a great product, but if you're
That's
using
right.
fear as a selling point, get bent. I don't fucking care.
Which is why, if we circle back to the earlier part of the conversation, I always talked about making sure that salespeople, sales engineers, that the company's driving towards customer adoption. So the customer defines what that journey looks like. and then the customer can focus on their line of business, right? I want to take security out of your mind, whether it's using an MSP, whether it's using say, automation in our platform, automation in other platforms, whatever. The goal is to release the people so that they can focus on other areas of the business and be productive and obviously bring up their revenues and their P&Ls and stuff like that.
For sure.
That's how my organization, my sales organization sells, and that's how we've trained them. I don't care about FUD and fear. We want to help, and sure, I've been here for 9 years. I think you know that at my company. It's got a great culture, great people. You know that. You met a number of us
I've met.
over the
Look,
years.
we stole a few of you guys when I worked for another company, and
Yeah.
I've always loved the people to come out that I've talked to from there. Look, I do want to give a shout out real quick, just because I haven't talked to her in forever. Luciana, I love you. Keep being amazing and doing great things for said company. Seriously, Luciana's amazing. Talking to her sales capability and what she knew and how to do it was just top notch.
Well, she worked with me at Kaspersky back in the day too. Then we traveled over here to Logarithm at the same time and
I did not
started
know
working
that.
here.
I did
Yeah,
not know you two worked together at Kaspersky.
we did, and I think if any of you guys know Lou, she Fireball. She outworks most people. Originally from Brazil, a little bit of an
Mm-hmm.
accent. When she went to Kaspersky, this Russian company, her territory was like Alabama, Mississippi, um, and they got heavy accents too. And one of the funniest stories she told me back in the day was she was talking to a customer, and the customer was like, "Where are you from?" And she's like, I'm from Boston." He's like, "That's not a Boston accent." So she'd been talking to him, and then a couple days later, he called back into the sales line, and he was talking to somebody else, and he's like, "I want to talk to that girl with that accent. I love her." And she crushed it, man. Customers loved working with her. She never lied to customers. She everything that she told the customer she would do for them on the sales side of the house,
Yeah.
she would deliver on. And it was funny, man. She came in out of nowhere and just rocked this market that you would have expected would not want to work with her, and she
Dude, you're
crushed it.
right. You would think down south they would despise her,
Not
and
down south, deep down south, man. Yeah.
whew,
Well, I think it comes back to what we talked about before when we were backstage earlier before we started this is trust, man.
yeah,
You make a promise to a customer, whether you're a sales rep, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a SOC analyst, doesn't matter. You make a promise, you follow up on it. You got to be accountable. You know that from your time in the military. If you say you're going to do something to your sergeant, to your platoon commander, you go and you do it. you don't not do it. You'll break
it's
trust
done.
with the
It was
people
done 5
beside
minutes
you.
ago.
That's right. Yeah, it was done 5 minutes ago. I'm already done, sir. That's it. You get that done. You get it done. So
But yeah,
it's
man.
always interesting.
So because we are hitting that top of the hour, what are some of the downsides beyond job loss? I do see any type of automation and machine learning leading to a lot of job loss.
Yeah.
I really do, going down the line. So besides that, are there any other downsides to machine learning? Now, you talked about the one branch where in terms of security, we have a lot of false positives and probably
Unsupervised.
even
Yeah.
false negatives. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. So what other downsides do you see with machine learning? Because
You can't.
I
So I want customers and I want people to take the time to get away from the architecture of what vendors are pitching them, right? And vendors talk about AI, machine learning, but they never really go deep into it, right? I want them to look deeper under the cover as they're evaluating a platform. It could be an EDR platform, it could be a firewall, it could be us, it could be whatever. But ask your vendors, ask people exactly what's under the hood. Um, if you get this confidence in machine learning, especially if it's just a base level unsupervised learning, and you start making decisions based on that data, you're going to make bad decisions for your company. Now, if they've curated that data and they have folks, data scientists or whatever, who are curating the data and extracting features and labeling the data, and you're making decisions based on that, your likelihood of making a bad choice is going to be lower. Now, if you have feedback loop, um, the third branch, if you have a feedback loop where you can actually help curate the data even better. So look for products that allow you to, curate your data. Look for products that do have some data curation on the supervised learning. A combination of all three is really good because you get the best of everything. But any new products, smaller teams, smaller companies that are coming into the market that are 50 people, 60 people, they might have a revolutionary idea, might have a beautiful console and stuff. But the reality is they probably don't have a lot of data scientists. So the ML that they're employing is likely unsupervised. So you're going to want to dig into that and better understand what that vendor is actually providing. There's not a lot of danger to it, man. The only danger is completely trusting machine learning to make all your decisions for you, and then automating after that fact. If you get some type of detection that says this looks a little bit different, and it's your CEO who does travel a lot more, and his dimensional data looks a little bit different, and you fully automate, blocking his account because just off that machine learning with no other dimension attached to it that says he looks a little bit different, you run the risk of locking his account while he's in the middle of a board meeting or whatever. The same for if we're talking about healthcare or other critical utilities, right? Maybe you are on some type of critical utility, a SCADA system or whatever, and you got machine learning looking at it, and it says this valve looks a little bit different. If you fully automate that workflow, especially when we're talking about critical infrastructure, it could turn the valve up, it could increase the valve's pressure, it could whatever. But that unsupervised learning probably couldn't make a really good determination. It made a little bit of a determination, but not a great one. And then if you've made a decision off of that and you've automated the decision, and you can create some havoc, right? So you got to better understand what machine learning is being used in the vendors that you're talking to and the applications that you're using before you fully automate them, because you can create some pretty massive damage depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah, for sure. And right along with that, man, you got some of your SOAR platforms, some of your EDRs, some of your SIM vendors and things like that. They're like, hey, if I see this, do you want me to block this IP? Do you want me to block all access? Do you want me to do this, do that, do the third?
Which is behavioral.
So it comes down to the human element of, go ahead, or no, don't. But with the machine learning, sometimes it takes that out of your hands if implemented incorrectly. And this is where machine learning really still relies on that human element of you have to configure it properly. Yes, if you see this, do that. If you don't see this, leave it alone. And sometimes people just kind of install and they kind of do the spray and pray of like, yeah, hey, do everything you want to do. And that's where you have issues.
Did you see the video of the Tesla Model Y side by side with, I think it was Rivian or somebody else, on autopilot, and they had a couple little shadows of two little kids right there to see if they would actually stop and detect them on autopilot. So the competitor one stopped. The Tesla one made a determination through machine learning that it wasn't a real child and just ran over the child shaped thing. The video is viral, man. You should see it. Tesla hits child in test or something. You can Google on YouTube. And that's
and of course they're blowing it up like it actually hit a real child.
Yeah, they make it sound all crazy. I mean, Tesla's very safe. They've driven 60 million miles without major accident, only a couple major accidents, which is more than we could say about most American drivers, right? So the reality is, though, there you go. They rely heavily on machine learning to do that detection, right? They're doing sensors and detection, all kinds of different inputs, but the machine makes the decision at that point whether or not it's a child or not to proceed. And it made a decision rightfully that it's not a real child, so I'm going to go, but wrongfully, because in that situation it looked like the shape of a child. Maybe you should have stopped, right? So that's an automated response to something. Yeah. Anyways,
definitely.
So before you cover off, I gotta give a shout out if you don't mind. You good with that?
Go for it, brother.
All right, I'm gonna give a shout out to Gretchen Smith. So Gretchen is founder of codeofvets.com. You guys check it out. Codeofvets.com is a direct assistance agency for veterans in need. They're a 501(c), phenomenal organization. She's retired Air Force. Their overhead on all the donations that come in is about 3% for administrative fees. The rest is direct assistance out to vets. This is direct payments for mortgages, for rent, for food. I worked with Gretchen last year. She had a vet down in Tennessee, a couple towns over from her, and she had put a plea out on Twitter. He had no family. He's an old Vietnam vet. There was nobody at the hospice with them. She had gone to visit him a couple times, but she was looking for somebody to send him, a note and a card and some flowers and stuff. Outside of the other stuff I'd done with Coda Vets, I sent some flowers. I had my son fill out a card thanking him for his service, and that there's somebody out there who appreciates him. So he got the card and the flowers, and it was just great, man. So Gretchen and Coda Vets, they're a phenomenal organization. They do a lot for our veterans who are in need, who are failing on their mortgages. They're looking for a place to stay. They're looking for food, trying to take care of their families, and it's direct assistance. It doesn't go to NGOs or these other organizations. Her and her team piggyback all this all the time. So I just wanted to give them a shout out because it's a phenomenal organization.
Yeah, definitely, man. Hey, look, so hey, everybody in the chat, check that out. Make sure promote it, whatever, get the word out there. Until now, Mike, I had never heard of them. So please, everybody else, please spread the word about Coda Vets. I'd love to see that get out there more. So otherwise, look, it's been an amazing episode.
Cool.
Not a lot of people know about mine and Mike's background and how we met, but it's a great story. Maybe we'll talk about it some other time.
Cool.
Otherwise, look, I love you all. Look, I'm going to B-Side St. Pete next week. So if you could head to CyberWarriorStudios.com/support-us, I would greatly appreciate it. Or go to CyberWarriorStudios.com and just find the support us link. Or buy merchandise, whatever the case may be. Please, I would appreciate it all because travel is expensive these days. Otherwise, y'all take care and have a great one because it's going to be a great weekend. I love you all. Take care. Be safe. And don't do nothing stupid, please. I don't need any phone calls.
Ever.